So what have we been going over the past couple of weeks? Relationships. What are the three main relationships that we were talking about that you deal with on a daily basis? Yes, ma'am. Your relationship with God, sir. Friends and family. Relationship with God, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your friends. We talked about the most important relationship being because he will help you navigate through your other relationships, right? We talked about what you look for as far as your friends, what standards. We talked about having standards when you go into a friendship. We talked about trying to get past just trying to be friends with people who you think are cool or just all these little superficial things. And we talked about having standards. When you go into a situation, when you meet somebody, something that you expect. We talked about being a friend, right? You can't have good friends unless you're willing to be a good friend. So we covered all those things. You guys have been doing a great job. So just like last month, this year we're trying something new. Where at the end of every month, we're going to have a guest speaker who's going to touch on what we've been learning and also tell some of their story and just whatever God puts on their heart. I've told you guys since I had the honor of getting this job that, hey, this isn't just all about me. I want to bring as many good men and women who believe in God, who are trying to live for God, into your presence. There's a saying about it takes a village. I believe that. The more godly people you have in your life, guiding you, showing you things, more opportunities for you to talk to, the different people. You don't know who you might gravitate to. So I feel like one of my duties is to surround you with good people that will help you, people that you can start a relationship with, that you can see outside of church, here in church, that you might be able to call, talk to. Because, hey, I understand everybody's not going to just automatically gravitate to me because I'm the pastor. I understand that. So I want to put good people around you. And these two people that I have this evening that are going to talk to you, I respect them. I met them. How long ago now? Over a year?
3 years.
3 years.
Yep. About 3 years ago. They have a tremendous story. A good young couple. These days, it's unfortunately, you don't run into a lot of young married couples who are trying to rock with Jesus and live for Jesus. But we have one here today. They have a tremendous story. I want you guys to listen. I want you guys to know how we do. You did a great job last month with Darius. We're going to be respectful. They have something to tell you. I know God is going to touch you through them. And at the end, we're going to do some question and answer. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I'm very, very excited. There will be some kids that come in a little late, but I'll make sure we don't interrupt you. But
Me.
this is my brother and my sister, Will and Dani Brown.
Oh, stand up.
Thank you for that introduction, Victor. So we want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. Uh, this is my wife
Sorry.
Danielle, and my son is somewhere in the back or getting changed or something. But we'll take a minute to introduce ourselves. There'll be some activities that we go through throughout the night. Neither one of us are public speakers, so forgive us if we trip over our words or we stutter or anything like that. But we hope you guys are super patient with us. We know that your time is precious and that you guys could have been anywhere tonight doing something else. So we appreciate that you guys showed up here and hope that you participate. We're trying to be respectful of your time and make sure it's worthwhile. So we ask that you hopefully are respectful towards us and our time and try to limit the distractions. This is informal and we hope it's conversational. So if there's something that comes to mind while we're speaking or any questions or anything that you need for clarification, I know myself, I get stuck on a point and then either get distracted for the rest of the time someone's talking or I don't remember my question for the end. There will be a section for Q&A at the very end, but if there's something you want to add during the process or a thought that comes to mind or a question that you have, just raise your hand and we'll call on you and we'll just keep it moving from there after we finish our thoughts. So to get started, I will introduce myself. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Mr. Will. Some of you know me as Coach. Some of you know me as Unc. But you can call me Mr. Will if you don't know me by either one of those names. But as Pastor Vic mentioned, we've been here at Open Door for about 3 years now, and definitely was not the church that we thought that we would end up at, but are super appreciative and is exactly what we needed in our life at that time and continues to be as we continue to get plugged in and learn from the different people that we meet through Open Door and just the different facets that they have, whether it's Real Faith, Real Talk, and just continue to getting plugged in the activities that they have. We really have found ourselves at home here. My wife Dani will introduce herself in a moment, but I wanted to give my testimony and just give you a little bit of a glimpse of my faith journey leading up to where I am today. So fortunately or unfortunately for some of you, you might be able to relate to my journey as I had a hard time growing up as far as my parents being substance abusers and just really not having their priorities straight. They partied a lot. They were with girls, drugs, alcohol. Those were the things that they liked to focus on. And not that they didn't love me, they definitely loved me, but I just think that they had a lot of distractions in their life that pulled away from their attention that unfortunately I was not the beneficiary of that. Both of them were in and out of jail, and there was times that I went through a lot of hardship, whether it was not having food in the fridge or not having electricity. There was actually a point where I was homeless for a period of time. So a lot of things that I felt like were happening to me, and I had a very victimized attitude, and I felt justified in that because of all the stuff that was happening to me. I didn't feel like I deserved as a kid not to have food in the fridge. I thought that every kid had food in the fridge, and that's just something that was entitled to me. And so I constantly felt like the world was against me. And one of the things that I'm grateful for, though, is that I can see God's hand looking back. I can see God's hand working throughout my life, because as I look back, I can see the people that He placed in my life to help bring me out of that situation and give me a chance to be where I am today. There was people that helped me get out of that victimized attitude of, man, everybody's just out to get me. The world's against me, and get me into a place of people, get around people, get plugged into church, get around people that could support me and encourage me to be growing in my faith. And that eventually led me to where I am today. Not to say that there weren't setbacks and drawbacks along the path to get to where I am today. I definitely made mistakes, and I'm still making mistakes today, but I try to keep those same principles that I learned along the way of not keeping that victimized attitude and shaking that off as quick as I can to get back on the path that God had for me, and making sure I'm surrounding myself with others that will help encourage me on that path. So I will let my wife share a little about herself as well.
What's up, guys? My name is Dani. Like Will said, I'm his wife, and our son is back there with Jody. His name's Liam. He's 2 months old. So a couple things about me. I'm definitely not a public speaker. So if you guys can participate, that would make me more comfortable, and you guys will definitely get a lot more from the word as well. And the second thing is I have an awful memory. So don't be offended if I don't remember your name, and I'll probably look at my notes a lot. So don't get distracted by that, okay? So I grew up in Brazil, very different from Will's upbringing. I grew up in a Christian household. My dad was a pastor and a missionary. And as I grew up, I kind of went through the motions of what I thought being a Christian was. I would open my Bible and take a picture and post it online just so that, my youth group leaders were proud of me. I would go to church every Sunday. I'd go to camp every year, and I'd have that spiritual revival that camp gives you. And then the week after camp, I'd go right back into sin, right back into what I was doing, right back into the bad relationships at school. So like I said, I kind of went through those motions, and I felt so empty. I felt like the church wasn't giving me what I wanted. I definitely wasn't having fun doing it. So I decided to go on my own path and find happiness in what I thought would be fun. So even though I got saved at 7, I got baptized at 10, at that point, I really didn't know what a relationship with God looked like at all. So I took happiness into my own hands, and I went on a hunt for it in worldly things. So I partied, drank, drugs, relationships. I did anything and everything that I could have done, I definitely did. And even though my parents were present and supportive, they tried to guide me as much as they could. They said, you are who you surround yourself with. Or they'd said that the mistakes that I was making as a teenager would affect my marriage. And honestly, I did not care what they said. And I thought that they were old, and I thought they were old school, and I thought that they had no idea what they were talking about. So that whole time, they really were just trying to save me from disaster, but unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way. And when I was about 18 or 19, God really broke me down, and showed me that He was the only person that I could rely on. So of course I had consequences, throughout my teenage years, but when I was 18 or 19, I was faced with big consequences. I was facing going to jail. I was going to be expelled from college. I had just lost a really close relationship due to being cheated on. And He took all the things that I thought were fun, all the things that were comfortable, all the things that brought me joy or temporary happiness. He stripped away from me. I lost all control. And I hope you guys never experience this, but if you go to jail, you absolutely have no control of anything. So that all caused me to really lose focus of myself and focus on God, focus on relying on God. And that is when my faith journey truly began, and when I think that I truly got saved. So all of that to say, we've made mistakes individually. We've definitely made mistakes together before getting married, after getting married. So first, we want you guys to know that there's hope for you. If you've made mistakes, if you're going to make mistakes, it's okay. God has so much grace and mercy. And secondly, we want you to know that we've walked in your shoes. We know what it's like to be a teenager. We've been there. We know the struggles and temptations that you guys are facing or may face or have faced in the past. And we want to be a resource to you guys. We hope that we can develop this relationship. We can keep it ongoing. And mostly, we hope that you guys can learn with our mistakes and hopefully avoid your own. So with that, sorry that was long, but we're going to jump into a game. We want you guys to be involved. Please do not be shy. Will's going to explain how it's going to work.
So as you guys can see, we need at least 2 volunteers. We'll have anybody that's brave enough. BB, Johnny, Aiden, anybody else? All right.
And we're going to make a competition, okay? So be competitive.
So y'all come on up here. Come on up to the table. Come on, Johnny. Grab one more chair. I'm gonna steal one more chair.
Okay, you guys are going to be on this side so everybody can see what you're doing.
Can you speak that to the...
Uh-oh. The pressure is on, my guy.
That's all right.
No eating, promise. Don't eat the grape.
All right, so everybody take a seat. Everybody get your workstation. All right, so we're gonna play a game called Grape Stand. The object of the game is to get your grape to stand up on the toothpick.
Supposed to balance on top
Supposed
of
to
it.
balance on top of it. We're gonna give you 45 seconds or less, depending on if you are able to knock it out or not. You can puncture the grape. You can poke it all the way through if you want to. You can't break the toothpick. Here's the 2 rules. You can't break the toothpick, and it's got to be standing on its own. You can't put the toothpick in a crack or lean it up against your body. You can see on the table, like on the projector, it's got to be standing up on a toothpick. Everybody got it? Got the rules?
Okay, and if you guys have any good ideas, shout it out to them, support them. They're being super brave by volunteering.
All right, you ready? On your mark, get set, go.
It has to be balancing on top.
Yeah, no, I had to like stand up.
It's got to stand up like it is on the
Cannot be
picture.
touching the table.
Put the stick in the crack.
Or you can't put it. You can't. It's got to be freestanding. All right, 25 seconds. All right. Obviously, you guys aren't getting it. We'll give you another toothpick. How about that? 2 toothpicks. All right, ready? On your mark, get set.
Same
go.
rules. Don't
Same
break
rules.
the toothpick.
It's just like riding a motorcycle, riding a bike. You just got to balance it, man. It's not that hard. Show me how it's done, BB.
It's that hard though.
And if I get 2 more, I can do this.
You get 2 more.
You guys got it. Keep trying.
All right.
Is it possible?
It
Okay. All
Let's
right.
Let's try one more toothpick. This time, let's put some steaks on the table.
is
Uh-oh.
Who likes Reese's? Not you.
Airhead,
Kit Kat.
Starburst. Kit Kat. All right. Oh, put one of each.
Airhead.
Yeah.
You like sour candies. Come
We'll
on.
do Airhead. We'll do Airhead. We'll do Airhead. All right, we're gonna give you guys one more toothpick, and you gotta wait till I say go.
Yeah, this is easy now.
All right. So the first when I say go, the first person that can get to stand up by themselves and grab the airhead and raise it wins. Sound good?
Johnny's ready.
Are you- All right, here we go. Ready? On your mark, get set. Jello. I said Jello. I said Jello. I said Jello. On your mark, set, go. All right.
right.
8-1, 8-1. Everybody get something out of the ball, though. Everybody get something out of
Thanks
the
for
ball.
volunteering.
Can I get a hand for our volunteers real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just one.
He goes, what's our limit?
You can.
If you answer a question right, you'll get another one. Okay.
All right.
Better, right?
So I know that was just a silly game, but what we were really trying to incorporate, similar to what you guys have already been talking about throughout the week that we had no idea about, but we also broke relationships down into 3 categories. And for a good spiritual well-being, that was the grape that was being represented in that little game. And then each of those 3 sticks, we could see that whenever there was just one stick, it was almost impossible. Now, there might be some Shaolin monk in China, deep in the jungle or something, that can stand up a grape on one toothpick, but I haven't met anybody yet that can do that. So what we're trying to drop home here is that there's 3 pillars or 3 categories of relationships that we believe are extremely important for you to have a healthy, strong foundation to your spiritual well-being. So Daniel is going to break that down in a different way here in a second, but go ahead and break that down for him, actually, in a different way.
So another way to remember this is GPS. Does anyone know what a GPS does?
Me.
Not Will.
Go ahead.
More volunteers. You in the corner. I don't know your name.
There you
Perfect.
go.
Yep. All right. So GPS helps guide you to where you need to go. In the context of relationships, our GPS is going to be God, people, self. Those are the 3 pillars. So let me remember my point. Give me a minute. Okay, good. Okay, so without our GPS, without those 3 pillars, remember the grape would fall. Without our GPS or without the 3 relationships, it's easy to get lost in the world. When one of these relationships is weak or not active in our lives, if we're not exercising good friends, if we're not exercising a good relationship with God, if we're not exercising a good relationship with ourselves, it's a lot easier to fall into sin. The Bible says in Matthew 7:13 through 14, wide is the gate and broad is the path that leads to destruction. Look at how many people enter that. It's a big door, and it's so easy to fall into sin, and that's where that path leads to. But small is the gate, and narrow is the path that leads to life, and only a few find it. And that few that find it, I can guarantee you, are exercising these 3 relationships. And I want to clarify that GPS is not your guide to salvation. We all know that salvation is found in Christ alone. However, God made us for relationships here on this earth, and they are essential to our spiritual well-being.
So we're going to break this down and tackle these one section at a time. I will tackle the first one with our relationship with God. So, as I mentioned before with my testimony, early on in my faith journey, I felt very victimized. I had a poor attitude and just always felt like the world was out to get me. Constantly unfair things were happening to me, and like I just had a rain cloud following me everywhere I walked. So as I was going through those things, I was really frustrated with God. I just felt like He wasn't on my side. He wasn't supporting me. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong or that I deserved to be treated that way, which caused me to be bitter and angry with Him. But what I didn't realize in that moment was that I didn't really understand God. I didn't get the time to know Him. I didn't spend any time with Him. But yet I was projecting all this frustration and anger on somebody I didn't really even take the time to get to know. So my question to myself was, one day, why am I so frustrated with God? And when I looked back and reflected on it, there were three key areas that helped me build my relationship with God, or three elements that I was missing in my relationship while I was frustrated. The first R was reading, the second R was remaining, and the third R is remembering. And I'm going to break those down for you guys in just a second. Before I do that, though, does anybody have the Bible app on their phone or have their Bible with them to help me with a couple verses? Sure. Can somebody grab Psalm 119:11? Raise your hand if you're grabbing that, because I got a couple more for somebody to grab. Okay. Can somebody help me out with Romans 12:12? Can I get a volunteer for that?
Maybe.
All right. Thank you, Kylie. And then another one for Jeremiah 29:11.
Okay.
All right. So for the first R was reading. And by reading and memorizing his word, I got to learn his nature. And the verse that I used to support that was in Psalms 119:11. Pastor Vic, if you could help me out with that.
I have treasured your word in my heart so that I may not sin against you.
So by reading and memorizing his word, and using that, I was able to start rebuilding that relationship with God and getting to know him a little bit better. Can someone help me with the remaining portion? Remaining prayerful and keeping him involved in my daily life. Romans 12:12. And if you haven't found it, I got it up here on the board too if you need to
Cheat sheet.
read that. Very good, very good. So another version says constant in prayer, and as I get to my story in a moment, you'll see how that helped pull me out of my situation and help me build my relationship back with God. And then could someone help me with remembering? The remembering what portion was, I needed to remember all that he had done for me, all he had blessed me with, and that he has a plan for my life. And I used Jeremiah 29:11 to support that. Any volunteers to read that? Go ahead, BB. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So how this is applicable to my life, couple things. So when I was growing up, I loved watching boxing and cage fighting and MMA and UFC. And one of my favorite fighters his name was Rashad Evans. And he had this really good quote that stuck with me for a while. He said, "You never know yourself until the chips are down. True strength is not measured when you're at your strongest, but when you're at your weakest." And I wanted to share that with you because I felt the biggest growth spurts in my life and my relationship with God whenever I was at my lowest points. So, one thing that has always remained true, regardless of how low I got, God never turned his back on me. God always made himself available to me. But one thing that I did realize is that God is a gentleman. He is willing to hold the door open for you, but he's not going to push you through it. It's going to be up to you all to walk through that door if you want to build that relationship with God. It's a two-way street. So the most recent growth spurt that I had personally was when just a couple years ago, actually, I had a battle with anxiety out of this world. So I just gotten married to my beautiful wife. We had just got a house. I was trying to figure out what it meant to be a man, how to provide for our family. And I just felt like there was an immense amount of pressure to perform well at work, love what I do. Hopefully she didn't have to work or anything like that. So I was really like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. But one of the things that I was getting into was I was in a position at work where they were trying to push me into a role that I did not like at all. I felt like all the relationships that I had to make were shallow, that I was selling myself just out to any and everybody to tell them what they wanted to hear, but I knew that once we had to deliver on the product, it wasn't what they wanted. And so that really made me feel like I was in just like a bad place, doing bad things, and mentally just not well off overall. And so what had started as what I thought was nothing started to spiral out of control as I would be able to get to work, and then I'd go out and do a couple of my sales calls or whatever, and then I'd end up going home to the point where I'd get to work and I couldn't make it out of my car to go into the building. I would get in the car in the driveway, and then just anxiety would build up into me, and I wouldn't want to get out of our driveway to the point that I remember one day, and she can remember, I'm sure, I couldn't get from as far as the bed to the couch to where I just broke down and I was crying in her arms because I felt like a failure. I felt like a fraud. I felt like there was just so much immense amount of pressure on me that I couldn't do anything and I wasn't worthy of anything. And what I realized to help get me up out of that situation, what I needed was a better relationship with God. When I looked at myself and I took personal inventory of myself, I wasn't involved in church. I had isolated myself. I was consuming bad things. And that wasn't just, I was eating bad stuff, because I definitely was. I had ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner pretty much all during that time. Gained weight, did all that kind of stuff, but also visually, like I was watching stuff on Netflix, I was watching stuff on Hulu, I was watching stuff on YouTube, scrolling through Instagram, and just knew it was a bunch of bad stuff. Even the music that I was listening to, I loved me some Drake and I loved me some J. Cole at times, but when I was listening to those lyrics, I could tell that what they were truly saying, what I was really feeding myself, was not something that was good for my body to be consuming, not something good for my mind to be consuming. All the while, I was taking all that stuff in, all that negativity on TV, all the stuff that I was hearing in the music. Yep, I have a Bible on my phone, but um, essentially, my Bible was collecting dust. I hadn't opened my Bible, and if I did, it was to keep a streak on the Bible app, so that way I could tell other people, well, I spent 100 days in the Bible. What do you mean I read my Bible? You can't hold that against me. I was going through the motions in my prayer life. Not that, saying the Lord's Prayer or anything like that is a bad thing or a bad thing to repeat and have a routine in, but I truly was just saying it from memory, not saying it intentionally, not saying it like I actually meant it. I wasn't having a conversation with my Creator in those moments. So what it took was some slow changes to change the direction of where I was going with my relationship with God to help pick me up out of that place of anxiety, because my wife couldn't do it, I couldn't do it myself, and the only other person I could rely on that I knew wouldn't let me down was God. So what I started to do was, I started to get in my Bible. I read my Bible. I looked for those situations in the Bible I looked for those verses in the Bible or those stories that could speak to my situation. I went to books like the book of Job, where it's talking about a man that the devil literally could do anything to. God gave him the pass except to kill the man. He lost his family. He had his own wife yelling at him, telling him to reject God, yet he remained faithful. And you can see what God did after he went through all that pain, because he was faithful and stuck with him. I looked at Paul, and I looked at the situation he was in, because he's locked up in jail for a lot of the Bible. And I could relate to that, because I felt like I was in a cell in my mind, that I was just stuck where I was at, and there was no getting out. I didn't have the key, and I had to serve a sentence. But I looked at the books that Paul wrote and some of the things that he was saying about rejoicing and being happy and praising God, yet he's stuck in a jail cell. And so I had to really dissect and look at what those men had in their life and what they were doing that helped to get them through those times. And ultimately, I know that God showed his mercy at the end of those stories. I had a handful of scriptures that I wrote on little sticky notes. I put on my nightstand. I put it on the mirror in my bathroom. I put it on my phone whenever I went to bed. I put it in the mirror in our room. I mean, I had just orange little dots. You would have thought I was a freak or it was a crime scene if you would have walked in my house back then, because of all the little sticky notes. But a couple of those verses that I had were Philippians 4:6, Jeremiah 29:11, which we listened to a little bit ago, and 2 Corinthians 10:5. All of those, I won't go through each one of those, but one of those talks about demolishing arguments and pretensions. I'll just go ahead and read it for you. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against God, the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I didn't want to misquote it. Go ahead, John. It's 2 Corinthians 10:5 is what I just read. then Jeremiah 29:11, which we listed out just a minute ago, and then Philippians 4:6. So one of those is talking about not being anxious. The other one is talking about how God's got a future and a plan for me. And the other one's talking about taking control of your thoughts. And those were all things and situations where I felt like I knew I could go to that text. And if I can accept the fact that John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son, if I can believe that, I need to be able to believe the other things in the Bible as well. And there's specific things. They call it the living word, because there's things in that Bible, although it was written 2,000 years ago, that can speak to your situation today. And I encourage you guys in those moments, if anybody's feeling anxious or lost or that they need something, that they go to those scriptures and go to the pieces of the word that can speak to their situation. 1 second. Like I said before, also just the music and stuff that I was listening to and the TV shows I was watching, I had to switch that around so that way I could feed myself something positive, something uplifting. And so I stopped listening to Drake and Lil Nas X or whatever is the hot thing today. I didn't listen to that kind of stuff. I started listening to Elevation Worship and some of the gospel artists that I really like to listen to. And one of the lyrics from Mary Mary that I kept that song on repeat. It said, "I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he's brought me this far to leave me." And I listen to that song on repeat and repeat because I think back to my past. And like I said in my testimony, I look back and I can see God's hand in each one of those situations and how he was able to help get me to where I was at today. And how dare I think that he was just going to drop me at that moment after he had brought me so far. So, to recap, can anybody remember what the 3 R's are? What we got right here? Remembering. What's another one?
Come get a candy.
What was it? Reading.
Come get a candy, girl.
What we got?
If you answer it right, you get one.
Remaining. There we go. So reading his word and memorizing his word and his nature, remaining prayerful and keeping him involved in my daily life, and remembering all that he's done for me and all he's blessed me with, and that he has a plan for my life. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I think the only other thing I want to add is just like in any relationship, to get closer to God, you need to spend time with him. And that's what these 3 R's will help you do, whether, it's prayer, ministry, reading, spending time with spiritual, godly friends that will influence you to be better. All of those are great ways to get closer to God. And with that, I'm going to lead into our relationship with people. This is our P to our GPS. So, next, please. In Genesis, we're going to take it way back to the beginning. I'm not going to read the whole chapter because I think most of us are familiar with Adam and Eve and God creating the world and everything. So God creates the heavens, God creates the earth, God creates the trees. He sees that everything is good. Can anyone tell me what the very first thing God said was not good? Yes. True, that tree was not good, but what did God create that he said was not okay? Anybody?
Back in the corner.
Billy? Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What did you say?
What was it?
Evil, also not a good thing, but the very first thing. Do you know what it is, Billy?
Maybe.
Okay.
Is it for man to be alone?
Yes.
There we go.
Genesis 2:18. Do you want a candy, Billy?
Later.
Okay. Okay, the very first thing God said was not good. Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." God did not make us to be alone. God did not make us to live in isolation. And I think you guys could see the effects of COVID. You guys all walked through that. Isolation was so detrimental to us, to our culture, to our society. And not only did God make us for relationships, he also commanded us to be in relationships. And we can see multiple times throughout the Bible, he's telling us to love our neighbors, love each other. Just to list a few, I'm going to read all of them real quick. John 15:12 says, "Love each other as I have loved you." 1 Peter 4:8, above all, love each other deeply. And let's read 1 John 4:21 together. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. Growing up, I was an extreme extrovert. I had no issues being in community. I loved being with people, loved talking. I can talk your ear off if you let me. But I surrounded myself with the wrong kind of community. If you remember from my testimony, I went into everything that was wrong. So I tried to find people that had stuff in common. I wanted to find people that liked to drink. I wanted to find people that liked to party. I wanted to find people that, liked doing drugs or whatever it was. And I had so many opportunities. Being a pastor's daughter, I was at youth group every single week. I had so many opportunities to hang out with people that knew how to be good friends, the people that would pray for me, the people that would give me biblical advice that I probably honestly didn't want to hear, the people that would encourage me to keep going to church and to be constant in my faith. But instead of choosing this, I chose to be surrounded by people that pushed me to sin, and in turn, I was also a friend that pushed other people into sin. And the Bible clearly talks about good company versus bad company, and we need to be so careful of the type of company that we surround ourselves with. Can you fix this? Thanks. All right, so good company. Can anyone tell me what they think a good friendship would look like? Just yell it out if you think it. Yep, a godly friendship, one that focuses on God. Anybody else? An honest friendship. Good. One more. Good. All right, so good company are friends that will encourage our relationships with Jesus. Those people will make us stronger and have a positive influence on us. And it's not a trick math equation. If you walk with the wise, you will be wise. Very good. And that's what Proverbs 13:20 says. Walk with the wise and become wise. Another verse that says kind of the same thing, Proverbs 11:14. This one's going to be in the Message. Without good direction, people lose their way. The more wise counsel you follow, the better are your chances. And not only will you become more wise, but you'll also be strengthened with these friendships. So Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. Proverbs 17:17 says the same thing. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity. So in the times that you're struggling, in the times that you do go into sin, that good friend is going to be able to pull you up out of that. It's going to say, hey, it's going to check you and say, hey, you're doing something wrong. And of course, they're going to do it gently and in the right way with the right intentions. You're doing something wrong, and you need to fix this. Now, flip side, let's look at bad company. Can anyone tell me what they think bad company looks like? Let me go over this side. Woo! I almost tripped. Vera? Someone that's jealous? Johnny? Somebody that lies to you. What's your name? Alicia. Go ahead.
Someone encourages you to go out and party instead of going to church or something.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what my friends were doing. What's your name, sweetie? Olivia, go ahead. A false relationship. True. All good examples of bad company. So bad company are people that do not have a relationship with Jesus or have a false relationship with Jesus. These are the people that influence you to sin, or maybe the ones that make fun of you for going to church, maybe the ones that curse all the time, maybe the ones that are lying or gossiping about you, talking behind your back, the people who are tempting you with sin. These are all examples of bad relationships, and these people are dangerous to be around. Let's look at some Bible verses together. The same one we started with for good company, we're going to start with for bad company. So the end of Proverbs 13:20 says, hang out with fools and watch your life fall to pieces. Proverbs 22:24-26 says, don't hang out with angry people, don't keep company with hotheads, bad temper is contagious, do not get infected. And even if you have a good heart, even if you're in church, even if you're a good, solid Christian, this company is hard to be around, is dangerous to be around because it is so easy to get infected. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, bad company disrupts good character. So even if you've got good character, they can still disrupt that. Proverbs 4:14 through 16 states very clearly, do not set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the way of the evildoers. Remember that big door. Remember that path that's so easy to go down? That's what they're talking about. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go on your own way. For they cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep till they make someone stumble. So like I said, even if you're a good person, have good habits, influence can be so powerful and cause you to sin. So do not get infected. And with that, we're going to go on to our second game. Can I have 2 more volunteers? I need someone that's sort of the same size.
Too fun. Oh, Kylie.
Kylie?
Yeah, we need some new volunteers.
All right. It'll work.
That'll be
It'll
close
work.
enough. All right.
Are you guys okay with sitting on the floor?
We got
Okay.
these two.
I think I only need 2, Olivia, but you can do the next one if you want. Okay. You got it.
All right. So in this activity, one of you is going to be the orange person. The other one's going to be the grayish white person. One person's going to be laying on the ground. The other person's going to be standing up. And this is called build me up or break me down. So one at a time. Only one person's going to be pulling at a time. So one participant, if you're the orange person, you're going to try to lift. When we tell you to go, we're going to try to lift the person up to your same level. So you're going to try to make Alicia stand up. Got that?
I think Kylie's going to be on the ground.
Okay.
They already established that. But you're going to try to lift Kylie up off the ground, okay?
So we're not both pulling at the same time. If you're the other person that's being pulled, you're just going to try to stand your ground. Does that make sense? And
Okay.
vice versa. When you're on the ground, you're just going to try to not get pulled up. But you're not pulling back and forth. You're just kind of dead
It's not
weight.
a tug of war. And the only rule is please do not hurt yourself. Don't pull a shoulder out of socket. Don't be too aggressive with each other, okay? All right, so you're going to stand right here for everyone to see. Kylie, would you take a seat on the ground? All right. Legs straight out in front of you. Extended arm to each other. You're going to be dead weight, okay? All right, try to pull her up. All right,
that
try
was too
again.
easy. That was too easy.
Be a
Pull
little
her,
bit
pull
more
her
dead
straight
weight.
up. Try to pull her straight up.
Are you okay? All right,
Pretty
good.
tough,
There,
all right?
dead weight.
Okay, there we go.
Pretty difficult.
All right, now switch roles. Now, Kylie, you're going to try to pull her down.
No, you're still in the same position. So Kylie's on the floor. Alicia, you're standing. But Kylie, you're trying to pull Alicia down to you. You're going to try to pull her down
And
to the
you just got to
ground.
stand straight up and try to stand your ground.
You can do it. Girl, do
You can
harder.
pull
Work
her
harder.
Pull harder.
There
There
we
you
go.
go.
Okay.
You don't need to switch positions, but essentially what we were trying to show you guys. Go ahead.
Okay. Grab a candy. You guys did good.
Hey, round of applause for our volunteers.
Good job. Okay. It didn't work out exactly how I wanted, but that's okay. Because the point, I want you guys to try to use this model to remember that it's so much easier to pull someone down. So, in this situation, Alicia was the good company. She's the person trying to lift her friend up to go to church, lift her friend up to stop partying. And Kylie was the person, the bad company. She was bringing Alicia down. So she's, the one that's encouraging Alicia to party, encouraging Alicia to lie, gossip, whatever the sin is. And it's so much easier to bring someone down than it is to pull someone up. I think I have a Bible verse after that. Oh, I lost my thoughts. Okay. So if you are strong in your faith, I want to make sure to clarify this. Absolutely go to the people who are not living their life correctly. Be disciples, encourage people, but those people should not be your closest friends. I want you guys to think of 5 of your closest friends that you have. Do they have the same goal of following Christ? Are they striving to be better, or are they stuck in sin? Do they care about a relationship with God? Do they care about what their parents say, if their parents are giving them godly advice? If the people part of your GPS is weak, we can so easily fall into sin. And concluding this thought is Proverbs 12:26. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. So my question for you guys to think about for this section is, who are you surrounding yourself with, And more importantly, what type of friend are you being to those people? Are you leading them astray? Are you the person that's the bad company to be with? Do you have something to add?
I would just say, as you guys look at that exercise and think back to when Kylie and Lisa were playing the game, how much easier it would be if there were two people trying to lift up Kylie, or three people, or four people for that matter, and the effect that you being around other people that are godly and good and just trying to strive to have that relationship with God and a good community, those are kind of safer circumstances to help pull someone up. Not that you should shun or reject anybody, regardless of their walk, but whenever you're coming to, or gang up on them for that matter, but when you're going to help try to correct or help show someone the godly way to do something, it's often better if you're not alone in that. It's a lot easier to pull up someone when you have some support with you. But other than that, that was good.
Okay. All right, and our last part of the GPS is relationships with self. I think you guys spoke on this in December about identity when Pastor Victor was talking about it. But a healthy relationship with yourself is knowing what defines you. As Christ followers, what should define us is found in the Bible. The Bible said we're sons and daughters of God and that our life's purpose is to serve Him. But it's really easy, especially in today's culture, to find your identity in other things. Can anyone tell me something else other than church or the Bible or God that you can find your identity in? Music? Sports? Prayer is a good thing to find your identity in, talking to Jesus, but what are some bad things that you can find your identity in? Good. So I'm going to give you a couple examples for me that I had struggled with when I was a teenager and even now. And guys, I still consider myself a teenager. I'm not old, okay? But something that I really struggled with was putting my identity in stuff that I did. So growing up, I was a gymnast, and I cared a lot about getting the gold medal. You know, I put my identity in, was I number one? What is it that I did? Or I would put my value in school grades. Did I get an A? Whenever I got a C or even an F on a test, the devil would creep into my head and say, you know, you're stupid. You didn't do enough. You're not good enough. Or another example, I've got 3. Number 2 is putting your identity in your past. To be honest, this is something that I still struggle with today. You guys heard my testimony. I made a lot of mistakes as a teenager, and these have come back to haunt me time and time again. So even if you correct your identity, those things can still come back to haunt you. So you always need to be on your guard and prepared for, what the devil can creep into your head and say. So some things that he would tell me about my past is, you are what your criminal record is. You've been to jail. That's something you'll always need to hide from. The mistakes that you made with guys destroyed you. You're worthless. You don't have value. They stripped that from you. And the third thing that often I would put my comparison in that wasn't God or put my identity in that wasn't God, is comparison with others. Who of you guys have social media? Anybody? What kind? Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. There is so much that the phones throw at us in our lives. And it's not a bad thing to have phones. I am not saying that. But it's very easy to enter into comparison when you're constantly scrolling and seeing what other people have. I'm not enough because I don't have a big fancy house. I'm not enough because I don't have the new iPhone. I'm not enough because I don't know the new TikTok dance or whatever it is. It's very easy to get those words in your head of I'm not enough, or I don't have enough, or I don't do enough. So let's look at what the Bible says that we are. So I have a couple verses. 1 John 3:1. Does anyone want to help me out with Bible verses? I'll read this first one. Do you want to find 1 Peter 2:9-10? Okay. 1 John 3:1 says, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are." So first, we are children of God. 1 Peter 2:9-10. Do you got it?
Yep. 1 Peter 2:9-10 says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into this wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
Mm-hmm. And last one is 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old is gone and the new is here. So according to these passages, we are children of God, we're God's special possession, and we are a new creation in Christ. Pastor Sean said, I don't know who was at the Sunday service, but a quote that he said a couple Sundays ago was that God chooses us based off of our availability, not based off of our ability. Therefore, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what people think of us. It doesn't matter what we have or maybe what we don't have. When we come to God and show ourselves available to him and available to have a relationship and call him our Savior, then God puts a stamp on us saying, you're enough just the way that I made you and nothing else, period.
And I also was going to touch on this in kind of a different perspective and talking about integrity, and we scroll that one just a second. Because as I was sharing in my testimony, I also made a lot of mistakes, but a lot of the mistakes that I was making, especially when I was coming up as a younger man just trying to find my way in the world, was mistakes that I didn't feel like were impacting anybody. And I feel like that's the biggest lie that the devil can tell you, is that the mistake that you make are not going to impact others. So the things that I was, whether I was participating in the parties or I was participating in gossip or whatever the situation may have called for, especially with my relationship with the girls, I always thought that was just, I wasn't impacting anybody else by going to that party, or I wasn't impacting anybody else by the relationship that I had with this girl. It was just a me and her thing, and she made that decision just as much as I did, and that wasn't going to impact me or anybody else. And what I came to realize now, looking back, is that it did impact me, especially with my relationship with my wife. Those are things that I had to confess to her about whenever we decided to get married, that I thought that meaningless relationship with a girl wouldn't have any impact on. And also, something that I'll have to talk to my son when he's old enough one of these days. I'll have to ask him to do something that I wasn't able to do by not going to that party, or not being in that relationship with that girl, or not pushing the boundaries to my relationships. And that's hurtful to me. That hurts my heart to have to ask him to do something that I wasn't able to do. And so, as I mentioned before, with my testimony, one of the biggest things that I tried to accomplish with sharing that is for those of, that are in a similar situation or going down that path, that they can see that example that I had already been through, and all the heartache that I had to go through, and the uncomfortable, space that it created with us, and how much we had to do to repair that relationship because of my past mistakes. Not that you can't get past it. We definitely have worked beyond it, but if I had knew then what I know now, I don't think I would be in those relationships or making those same decisions. And for those of you that haven't gotten into that mess before, I hope that by me sharing this, it helps you to avoid those situations and keep what you have sacred, and just stay out of those types of circumstances. You go to the next point. So, overarching with integrity, integrity is, I hope that you guys strive to be a good example and not a good excuse, because you never know who's watching. And sin typically finds its way to bubble up to the surface in one way or another, regardless of whether you feel like you're in it alone or that somebody is never going to find out about it. That stuff will eat you up, and it eventually will manifest itself in some way. So, that in conclusion, going back to the grape, going back to where we started from, it's important to have all three types of the relationships that we reviewed today in order to have a healthy and active spiritual well-being. Each one of those legs are super important in order for that foundation to be set. Whenever one of those legs is weak, or we're not practicing it, or we're not active in it, it can cause us to fall and be vulnerable to sin. If we have a weak relationship with God, it can make it hard for us to see, accept, or understand the truth. If we have a weak relationship with people, it can cause us to be isolated or to be around the wrong people that make our circumstances worse than what they already are. And if we have a weak relationship with ourselves, It can cause us to believe Satan's lies, to reject help from others, including God, and become lost. And that's all we had for you guys. Is there any questions that you guys have off the rip from what we reviewed today? You did a good job. We covered everything. No questions.
Oh, we did so good.
Man. Yes. Sure.
Then hopefully they'll warm up. But when did you get to a space where it didn't matter what the people around you thought about your relationship with God? Like, when did you realize? Was it through a lot of suffering, or was it just like a light bulb moment? But how did you go about saying, man, it really doesn't matter what the people around me think about me rocking with Jesus?
For me, it was when I changed my environment. I changed my environment before I changed my opinion of, I accepted the opinion from others. So whenever I decided that, I looked around and all I could see was broken people around me, and whether it was my friends that were getting locked up at 13 and going to juvenile detention centers, or the kids that were partying and then sick the next day and then failing their tests. I don't know how many of my friends in grades like 5, 6, and 7 ended up getting held back, even 8th and 9th grade actually. But there's just so many kids that were held back because they were focusing on partying. They were focusing on whatever girl that they thought that they were going to be married to one of these days, or whatever the case may be. And their focus were just never on positive things. And I could see this other group of people that were in my youth group, or people that I'd been introduced through different church events or things of that nature that we had going on in my town. And I think once I started surrounding those people, I started feeling better about myself, and that kind of attracted me to that surrounding. And it wasn't necessarily that I cared any more or less about, either one of those relationships. It was more so of like, I want to be around people that make me feel good about myself, even when they're telling me that what I'm doing is wrong or trying to speak truth to me. I would much rather someone say, hey man, you got a booger in your nose, you looking kind of crazy, versus other people that's like, bro, you've been walking around with a booger in your nose all day, and we've been cracking on you all, and and that's kind of a funny way to say it, but really, like, when I'm going out and partying and stuff like that, when I show up to school the next day and they're like, bro, like, we had a study group and you bailed on me, like, what happened? Those friends that are going to help push me to be a better person, I was attracted to that side of things more so than the opinions of people, how it made me feel.
It's a loaded question, but for me, kind of what Will was saying a little bit ago about how eventually your sin boils to the surface. Being a pastor's daughter, while I was making all those mistakes, I was still in church. I was still living a double life. To the people in the church, to my dad, to my parents, I was saying, look at me, like I'm such a good Christian, and then going behind their backs and doing mistakes. And that kept going and going until, like I said, when I was 18 or 19, all my dirty stuff got exposed. Going to jail, having everything on your criminal record, having to confess everything to the people of college, I think everything boiled up to the surface that I thought would never boil to the surface. And I had so much guilt weighing on me that I needed to get off my chest. I could not stand it anymore. So once I got to that point of God breaking me down, that's when I was like, you know what? I'm a sinner. That's where I am. But God has so much mercy and God has so much grace. And that's where I'm going to draw my value from. So once I found my value in Christ, I didn't care who saw my mistakes. I didn't care. I'm very open with you guys. If you guys have any questions, I am an open book. I will share anything. But because I don't care about what people think about me, because kind of what I said before, I draw my value from God, and His grace and mercy has wiped me clean. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, also, I was saying how I was drawn to the people. One of the big attributes of the people that around the church had was we all had in common that we were sinners. Like, it's not like I was trying to show off my best self, or like, not that I wasn't trying to be a good person all the time, but like when I hung out with my older friends or the friends that were a bad influence on me, they shielded me from anything that was negative that had to go on with them. If they were struggling with anxiety, they would never let me see that, versus the people at church is like, hey man, I went through that and I can help you, like we're sharing today. This is what I've done to help find my way through it. So it wasn't like they were being fake with me. And that was another thing that really drew me in, was like, these people not only are going to be real with me, but they care about me and are willing to share what they went through to hopefully help me, versus, man, you're stupid. Anxiety ain't real. Like, it is real. So, Miss Billy?
At what point in y'all's relationship did y'all realize that you needed to rely on each other?
It's an easy answer for me because, like I said, I had gotten into a bunch of relationships prematurely before I was ready for it. And so all the things that was demanded of me before were nothing. Like, I had to be good looking in order to get a girl back in the day, or I had to be an athlete, or I had to be smarter, and it was all these superficial things. But whenever we met, one of the things that I'd never been challenged with before was the fact that she wanted a spiritual leader. If there was no getting to Dani unless you were a spiritual leader, unless you were active in church, unless you had your stuff together, and that was a big portion of your life. And when I had met her, that was...
Can you repeat that again? I need my young ladies to hear that. There was no getting to Dani unless what?
Unless I was a spiritual leader. Zero chance. And she called me out on that. And she said, hey, this stops here. I remember I'd bounce around from church to church intermittently throughout college and whatnot. But she was like, hey, if you're not serious about your relationship with God, I need somebody that's going to be a leader. I can't lead you into Christ. Like, I need you to be the man that's going to lead me and eventually lead our family one of these days as a spiritual leader. So if you don't have a strong foundation, there really can't be a us, and you need to work on that before you are looking for any relationship, not even just her. But she was, like I said, flat out just calling it what it was. Like, you need to be a spiritual leader in a relationship, and I need that. That's a requirement for me. Otherwise, this is done. So that's easily how I was able to depend on her. And I mean, I brought value to the table, but she helped me tremendously and just called me out on that.
I think that I knew that I needed to rely on my husband, and that started before I even met Will. So one of our first dates, we laugh about it to this day, because the very first date, I intimidated him a little bit, and I was like, listen, this is my past. This is everything that I have done. I told him I'm sick of short relationships. I'm sick of fake relationships. I'm going to lay it out on the table, and you can take it or you can leave it. And I knew that I needed to be able to trust my future husband. I knew that I needed to be able to rely on him to pick me up and pull me up if I start straying towards, those mistakes again. So from the beginning, I knew that I needed someone that I could rely on, and I tested Will. I was like, here, I'm going to throw this at you, and hopefully if you catch it, you're the right one for me. So that's when I knew I needed to rely on someone.
Talk to being in relationships at a young age, at their age. Something I'll admit it, as a probably overprotective youth pastor, I see some of them, and they're all probably curious, but I see some taking these steps in relationships, and the father in me comes out, because I'm like, we talked about some things about knowing who you are in Christ before you can even succeed in anything, So at a young age, at this age, what's some advice you would give about rushing into these relationships? I joke with them and I tell them all the time, y'all putting 25, 30-year-old pressure on yourself with these, you gotta have a boyfriend, gotta have a girlfriend. Could you speak to that a little bit?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Well, my first interest in having a boyfriend was when I was 10 years old. I was really young. Some of you guys, is anyone 10 years old here? Okay, everyone else is older. Okay, that's when I piqued my interest, and my parents told me, and this is advice that I did not take, but I absolutely wish I had, is that if you have no interest in marrying this person, do not waste your time. Do not waste your time. Do not waste the energy. There is so much that you can be doing at 10 years old other than chasing after a guy that has no interest in marrying you. At 10 years old, Vera, I know you want to be married, but can you think about marrying someone right now? Okay, you guys at 10 years old, you don't have a job, you don't have a car, you don't have means of dating each other, so you have no business dating each other. And this is not a judgment, because I dated at 10, but I wish that I hadn't. And I know you guys hear a lot as youth, save yourself for marriage, save yourself for marriage. I know you probably get sick of hearing it, but I genuinely wish I had saved myself for marriage, because me and Will can speak on it, that it can create a lot of trust issues in marriage. It can create a lot of heartache. It can create, a lot of just hurt. That I wish that I was Will's first. He wishes that I was his first, and we genuinely wish that we had saved ourselves, and then we couldn't compare, each other to other people.
It's just uncomfortable in general whenever you're having to make a commitment to someone that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, that you're bringing all this baggage into the relationship whenever you could have avoided that. But back to your question, remind me what the question was actually.
Just want you to speak about having
Relationships this young.
age,
So,
because I see a lot of them, and we know, we've been there.
Mhm.
You start to get engulfed in it, and that's where most of your time and energy comes.
Mhm.
Now, again, at a young age, where you could be doing a lot of other things,
Mhm.
you're now having arguments, and now why didn't you text me, or I saw you by the locker with little Johnny.
Mhm.
It's just all this pressure that I'm like, I wish they would avoid, I just didn't know if maybe you can have a different voice. Maybe somebody will get it based off something you said.
yeah, and I would say, in my experience and just being vulnerable in it, a lot of the pressure that I feel like, especially in middle school, high school, is like a bunch of pressure for a physical relationship to happen, or, kissing each other and so on and so forth, which is an awkward thing to talk about, but like, there's so much more when you get older and you start to mature. There's so much more in a relationship than the physical aspect of it. I hate to break this to you, but I don't know one person that's 80 years old and looks like a perfect 10 out there. We're all going to get old. We're all going to get less better looking. And that is what it is. And whenever that does happen, you're having to rely on the spiritual aspect of your relationship and the bond that you share in that way, the emotional part of your relationship and the bond that you share in that way. And I feel like those are safer things, because you can have a emotional relationship with someone without being a boyfriend and girlfriend, husband, wife type of relationship, and genuinely just get to know with somebody, and to be able to assist them in certain ways, whether it be through advice or through just being an ear for someone to talk to, that doesn't push a boundary that you then have to confess to someone. You can have a good spiritual relationship. And once, in my experience, whenever I had that emotional relationship and spiritual relationship first, namely with her, the rest of the relationship flourished so much more, because I didn't have to rely on her physical appearance, or whether she was, long distance relationships are hard, and we spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, or we didn't even see each other. And you need those other portions of your relationship to rely on. So if you're going to go down those paths where you're trying to dive into relationships, I would encourage you to focus on a spiritual and emotional relationship, and let that be your basis and your foundation if you're going to go exploring. Because fact of the matter is, I know that, as much as we would want everyone to not go into that, that arena of a dating relationship at an age where you're not really thinking about marriage, if you were, that would be the areas that I would prefer, and the advice that I would give to my son at this age: make sure that you're getting into, make sure that you're having relationships as far as an emotional and spiritual relationship before any of the physical stuff comes in.
Yeah, I would add to that, saying that starting off with a friendship is so much better, because let's say, I know what you guys do in school now, you go up to someone, you guys are kissing on them, then what if you sit down and have a conversation with them and don't like them at all? Like, you haven't developed that friendship before you develop that intimacy. And I think that's the point that is important to realize.
That's a great point about friendship, because I see a lot of times, I'm like, there's a cool friendship, and then you add this title to it, and now you're arguing, you're breaking up, you're all weird around each other.
And then you ruin a friendship. Yep. Yeah.
Anybody else before we close it out? I do have one more. So Darius talked about it, you guys talked about it, and I love it because they get to hear from people other than us. But Darius talked about the importance of being in that word, reading your Bible. You talked about the importance of reading your word, being in the Bible. We also know that that's not an easy thing, even at our age, especially at a young age. Any advice or anything you did to put you in a habit of reading your Bible every day?
Not doing it alone.
Hmm.
Having someone that, not necessarily is uh, coming down on you or anything, but if you have someone that you can do a devotional with, I know that even the pastors of this church send out a message to me every once in a while that if I do read my Bible, but if I didn't read my Bible, I would at least get a little bit of word in the text messages that I read from them. So having someone that you can go through a devotional with, check in with, and have conversations beyond just reading the scripture, because I feel like God uses people too. I feel like that's a good way to help exercise that muscle. And whenever one person is falling, the other person can pick them back up, just like we had reviewed earlier as well.
I would agree. Mine is the same. If I can be vulnerable with you guys, I have spent more time in my Bible in the last couple of days preparing for this than I have in a long time. And so thank you guys for pushing me and challenging my faith. But also something that I've joined in recently is a women's Bible study on Sundays. And we're reading through a Bible study together, and each day it has something laid out for me. So I know when I was a teenager, I didn't want to just open my Bible and start reading. It was meaningless. There was zero context. I needed help deciphering the Bible. So sometimes, like Will said, getting with someone that's a little bit ahead of you in their faith and starting a Bible study with them so that they can, help walk you through, or being in a Bible study with, for me, it's with women. I love that. And just challenging each other to be in the Word daily. So when we get to Sunday, we can look back on what we've done this week. And again, if we haven't done this week, there's grace. And the women in our Bible study still push me to do better the next week. So not doing it alone is definitely important.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. Can we give them a hand? Here's the great thing, and I encourage you and challenge you to take advantage of it. I told you when Darius was here, we told you that he's extended family. You'll see him on the campus from time to time. But you can find this brother and sister here 90% of Sundays, Fridays, Wednesdays. So please, this broke the ice. Now you can come to them. They can come to you. Get close to these folks. I'm telling you, get close to these folks. They have jewels. This is only the tip of the iceberg of their story. Mm-hmm. I know their love for you guys, for you. And like she said, they're not like they're 50, 60 years old. They can relate to what's going on in your world, in your generation. Please, when you see them on campus, talk to them and start a relationship with them.
And both of Pastor Vic and Miss Jody have our numbers. So girls, if you need that and want to get it from Miss Jody, and guys, if you need to get it from Mr. Vic, Pastor Vic, those are at your disposal. We want to be available to you guys. God really placed it on our heart to just be able to speak to you guys. And hopefully this is just the beginning, and that there'll be a flourishment of our relationship and many more conversations to come.